I say, my loves, this is your girl, Empress Goddess, coming back at you with some more knowledge. This is the life and teachings of Thoth Hermes Trismegistus. Gives listeners an account of the history of Thoth, referencing many sources such as the lost writings of Hermes. This audiobook is a must listen for anyone who's interested in learning more about Thoth Hermes Trismegistus. This is by Manly P. Hall.
Is audible. The Life and Teachings of Thoth Hermes Trismegistus by Manly P. Hall. Narrated by Arthur Rowan. The Life and Teachings of Thoth Hermes Trismegistus by Manly P. Hall. Thunder rolled. Lightning flashed. The veil of the temple was rent from top to bottom. The venerable initiator, in his robes of blue and gold, slowly raised his jeweled wand and pointed with it into the darkness revealed by the tearing of the silken curtain. "Behold the light of Egypt!" The candidate, in his plain white robe, gazed into the utter blackness framed by the two great lotus-headed columns between which the veil had hung. As he watched, a luminous haze distributed itself throughout the atmosphere until the air was a mass of shining particles. The face of the neophyte was illumined by the soft glow as he scanned the shimmering cloud for some tangible object. The initiator spoke again. "This light which ye behold is the secret luminance of the mysteries. Whence it comes none knoweth, save the master of the light. Behold him!" Suddenly, through the gleaming mist, a figure appeared, surrounded by a flickering greenish sheen. The initiator lowered his wand and, bowing his head, placed one hand edgewise against his breast in humble salutation. The neophyte stepped back in awe, partly blinded by the glory of the revealed figure. Gaining courage, the youth gazed again at the divine one. The form before him was considerably larger than that of a mortal man. The body seemed partly transparent, so that the heart and brain could be seen pulsating and radiant. As the candidate watched, the heart changed into an ibis, and the brain into a flashing emerald. In its hand, this mysterious being bore a winged rod, entwined with serpents. The aged initiator, raising his wand, cried out in a loud voice, "All hail thee, Thoth Hermes, thrice greatest! All hail thee, Prince of Men! All hail thee who standeth upon the head of Typhon!" The same instant, a lurid, writhing dragon appeared, a hideous monster, part serpent, part crocodile, and part hog. From its mouth and nostrils poured sheets of flame, and horrible sounds echoed through the vaulted chambers. Suddenly, Hermes struck the advancing reptile with the serpent-wound staff, and with snarling cry the dragon fell over upon its side, while the flames about it slowly died away. Hermes placed his foot upon the skull of the vanquished Typhon. The next instant, with a blaze of unbearable glory that sent the neophyte staggering backward against a pillar, the immortal Hermes, followed by streamers of greenish mist, passed through the chamber and faded into nothingness. Suppositions concerning the identity of Hermes. Iamblichus averred that Hermes was the author of 20,000 books. Manetho increased the number to more than 36,000. Figures which make it evident that a solitary individual, even though he be overshadowed by divine prerogative, could scarcely have accomplished such a monumental labor. Among the arts and sciences which it is affirmed Hermes revealed to mankind were medicine, chemistry, law, art, astrology, music, rhetoric, magic, philosophy, geography, mathematics, especially geometry, anatomy, and oratory. Orpheus was similarly acclaimed by the Greeks. In his Biographia Antiqua, Francis Barrett says of Hermes, "If God ever appeared in man, he appeared in him, as is evident both from his books and his Pymander, in which works he has communicated the sum of the abyss, and the divine knowledge to all posterity, by which he has demonstrated himself to have been not only an inspired divine, but also a deep philosopher, obtaining his wisdom from God and heavenly things, and not from man." His transcendent learning caused Hermes to be identified with many of the early sages and prophets. In his ancient mythology, Bryant writes, "I have mentioned that Cadmus was the same as the Egyptian Thoth, and it is manifest from his being Hermes, and from the invention of letters being attributed to him." In the chapter on the theory of Pythagorean mathematics will be found the table of the original Cadmean letters. Investigators believe that it was Hermes who was known to the Jews as Enoch, called by Keneally the second messenger of God. Hermes was accepted into the mythology of the Greeks, later becoming the Mercury of the Latins. He was revered through the form of the planet Mercury, because this body is nearest to the sun. Hermes, of all creatures, was nearest to God, and became known as the messenger of the gods. In the Egyptian drawings of him, Thoth carries a waxen writing tablet, and serves as the recorder during the weighing of the souls of the dead in the judgment hall of Osiris, a ritual of great significance. Hermes is of first importance to Masonic scholars, because he was the author of the Masonic initiatory rituals, which were borrowed from the mysteries established by Hermes. Nearly all of the Masonic symbols are Hermetic in character. Pythagoras studied mathematics with the Egyptians, and from them gained his knowledge of the symbolic geometric solids. Hermes is also revered for his reformation of the calendar system. He increased the year from 360 to 365 days, thus establishing a precedent which still prevails. The appellation thrice greatest was given to Hermes because he was considered the greatest of all philosophers, the greatest of all priests, and the greatest of all kings. It is worthy of note that the last poem of America's beloved poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, was a lyric ode to Hermes. The mutilated Hermetic fragments. On the subject of the Hermetic books, James Campbell Brown, in his History of Chemistry, has written, "Leaving the Chaldean and earliest Egyptian periods, of which we have remains but no record, and from which no names of either chemists or philosophers have come down to us, we now approach the historic period, when books were written, not at first upon parchment or paper, but upon papyrus. A series of early Egyptian books is attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, who may have been a real savant, or may be a personification of a long succession of writers. He is identified by some with the Greek god Hermes, and the Egyptian Thoth or Tuti, who was the moon god, and is represented in ancient paintings as ibis-headed, with the disk and crescent of the moon. The Egyptians regarded him as the god of wisdom, letters, and the recording of time. It is in consequence of the great respect entertained for Hermes by the old alchemists that chemical writings were called hermetic, and that the phrase hermetically sealed is still in use to designate the closing of a glass vessel by fusion, after the manner of chemical manipulators. We find the same root in the hermetic medicines of Paracelsus and the hermetic Freemasonry of the Middle Ages. Among the fragmentary writings believed to have come from the stylus of Hermes are two famous works. The first is the Emerald Table, and the second is the Divine Pymander, or, as it is more commonly called, the Shepherd of Men, a discussion of which follows. One outstanding point in connection with Hermes is that he was one of the few philosopher-priests of pagandom upon whom the early Christians did not vent their spleen. Some church fathers went so far as to declare that Hermes exhibited many symptoms of intelligence, and that if he had only been born in a more enlightened age, so that he might have benefited by their instructions, he would have been a really great man. In his Stromata, Clement of Alexandria, one of the few chroniclers of pagan lore whose writings have been preserved to this age, gives practically all the information that is known concerning the original 42 books of Hermes, and the importance with which these books were regarded by both the temporal and spiritual powers of Egypt. Clement describes one of their ceremonial processions as follows. For the Egyptians pursue a philosophy of their own. This is principally shown by their sacred ceremonial. For first advances the singer, bearing some one of the symbols of music. For they say that he must learn 2 of the books of Hermes, the one of which contains the hymns of the gods, the second the regulations for the king's life. And after the singer advances the astrologer, with a horologe in his hand, and a palm, the symbols of astrology. He must have the astrological books of Hermes, which are 4 in number, always in his mouth. Of these, one is about the order of the fixed stars that are visible, and another about the conjunctions and luminous appearances of the sun and moon, and the rest respecting their risings. Next in order advances the sacred scribe, with wings on his head, and in his hand a book and rule, in which were writing ink and the reed with which they write. And he must be acquainted with what are called hieroglyphics, and know about cosmography and geography, the position of the sun and moon, and about the 5 planets, also the description of Egypt, and the chart of the Nile, and the description of the equipment of the priests, and of the place consecrated to them, and about the measures and the things in use in the sacred rites. Then the stole keeper follows those previously mentioned, with the cubit of justice, and the cup for libations. He is acquainted with all points called paidutic, relating to training, and moschophaltic, sacrificial. There are also 10 books which relate to the honor paid by them to their gods, and containing the Egyptian worship, as that relating to sacrifices, first fruits, hymns, prayers, processions, festivals, and the like. And behind all walks the prophet, with a water vase carried openly in his arms, who is followed by those who carry the issue of loaves.
Classic.
He, as being the governor of the temple, learns the 10 books called hieratic, and they contain all about the laws and the gods, and the whole of the training of the priests. For the prophet is, among the Egyptians, also over the distribution of the revenues. There are then 42 books of Hermes indispensably necessary, of which the 36 containing the whole philosophy of the Egyptians are learned by the forementioned personages, and the other 6, which are medical, by the pastophoroi, image bearers, treating of the structure of the body, and of disease, and instruments, and medicines, and about the eyes, and the last about women. One of the greatest tragedies of the philosophic world was the loss of nearly all of the 42 books of Hermes mentioned in the foregoing. These books disappeared during the burning of Alexandria. For the Romans, and later the Christians, realized that until these books were eliminated, they could never bring the Egyptians into subjection. The volumes which escaped the fire were buried in the desert, and their location is now known to only a few initiates of the secret schools. The Book of Thoth. While Hermes still walked the earth with men, he entrusted to his chosen successors the sacred Book of Thoth. This work contained the secret processes by which the regeneration of humanity was to be accomplished, and also served as the key to his other writings. Nothing definite is known concerning the contents of the Book of Thoth, other than that its pages were covered with strange hieroglyphic figures and symbols, which gave to those acquainted with their use unlimited power over the spirits of the air and the subterranean divinities. When certain areas of the brain are stimulated by the secret processes of the mysteries, the consciousness of man is extended, and he is permitted to behold the immortals, and enter into the presence of the superior gods. The Book of Thoth described the method whereby this stimulation was accomplished. In truth, therefore, it was the key to immortality. According to legend, the Book of Thoth was kept in a golden box in the inner sanctuary of the temple. There was but one key, and this was in the possession of the Master of the Mysteries, the highest initiate of the Hermetic Arcanum. He alone knew what was written in the secret book. The Book of Thoth was lost to the ancient world with the decay of the mysteries, but its faithful initiates carried it sealed in the sacred casket into another land. This book is still in existence and continues to lead the disciples of this age into the presence of the immortals. No other information can be given to the world concerning it now, but the apostolic succession from the first Hierophant, initiated by Hermes himself, remains unbroken to this day, and those who are peculiarly fitted to serve the immortals may discover this priceless document, if they will search sincerely and tirelessly for it. It has been asserted that the Book of Thoth is, in reality, the mysterious tarot of the Bohemians, a strange emblematic book of 78 leaves which has been in possession of the gypsies since the time when they were driven from their ancient temple, the Serapeum. According to the secret histories, the gypsies were originally Egyptian priests. There are now in the world several secret schools privileged to initiate candidates into the mysteries, but in nearly every instance they lighted their altar fires from the flaming torch of Herm. Hermes, in his Book of Thoth, revealed to all mankind the one way, and for ages the wise of every nation and every faith have reached immortality by the way established by Hermes in the midst of the darkness for the redemption of humankind. Poimandris, the vision of Hermes. The divine Poimander of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus is one of the earliest of the Hermetic writings now extant. While probably not in its original form, having been remodeled during the first centuries of the Christian era and incorrectly translated since, this work undoubtedly contains many of the original concepts of the Hermetic cultus. The Divine Poimander consists of 17 fragmentary writings gathered together and put forth as one work. The second book of the Divine Poimander, called Poimandris, or the Vision, is believed to describe the method by which the divine wisdom was first revealed to Hermes. It was after Hermes had received this revelation that he began his ministry, teaching to all who would listen the secrets of the invisible universe as they had been unfolded to him. The Vision is the most famous of all the Hermetic fragments, and contains an exposition of Hermetic cosmogony and the secret sciences of the Egyptians regarding the culture and unfoldment of the human soul. For some time, it was erroneously called the Genesis of Enoch, but that mistake has now been rectified. At hand, while preparing the following interpretation of the symbolic philosophy concealed within the Vision of Hermes, the present author has had these reference works: The Divine Poimander of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, translated out of the Arabic and Greek by Dr. Everard; Hermetica, edited by Walter Scott; Hermes, The Mysteries of Egypt, by Edward Shure; and The Thrice Greatest Hermes, by G.R.S. Mead. To the material contained in the above volumes, he has added commentaries based upon the esoteric philosophy of the ancient Egyptians, together with amplifications derived partly from other Hermetic fragments and partly from the secret arcanum of the Hermetic sciences. For the sake of clarity, the narrative form has been chosen in preference to the original dialogic style, and obsolete words have been given place to those in current use. Hermes, while wandering in a rocky and desolate place, gave himself over to meditation and prayer. Following the secret instructions of the temple, he gradually freed his higher consciousness from the bondage of his bodily senses, and, thus released, his divine nature revealed to him the mysteries of the transcendental spheres. He beheld a figure, terrible and awe-inspiring. It was the great dragon, with wings stretching across the sky and light streaming in all directions from its body. The mysteries taught that the universal life was personified as a dragon. The great dragon called Hermes by name and asked him why he thus meditated upon the world mystery. Terrified by the spectacle, Hermes prostrated himself before the dragon, beseeching it to reveal its identity. The great creature answered that it was Poimandris, the mind of the universe, the creative intelligence, and the absolute emperor of all. Shur identifies Poimandris as the god Osiris. Hermes then besought Poimandris to disclose the nature of the universe and the constitution of the gods. The dragon acquiesced, bidding Trismegistus hold its image in his mind. Immediately, the form of Poimandris changed. Where it had stood, there was a glorious and pulsating radiance. This light was the spiritual nature of the great dragon itself. Hermes was raised into the midst of this divine effulgence, and the universe of material things faded from his consciousness. Presently, a great darkness descended, and, expanding, swallowed up the light. Everything was troubled. About Hermes swirled a mysterious watery substance, which gave forth a smoke-like vapor. The air was filled with inarticulate moanings and sighings, which seemed to come from the light swallowed up in the darkness. His mind told Hermes that the light was the form of the spiritual universe, and that the swirling darkness which had engulfed it represented material substance. Then, out of the imprisoned light, a mysterious and holy word came forth, and took its stand upon the smoking waters. This word, the voice of the light, rose out of the darkness as a great pillar, and the fire and the air followed after it. But the earth and the water remained unmoved below. Thus, the waters of light were divided from the waters of darkness, and from the waters of light were formed the worlds above, and from the waters of darkness were formed the worlds below. The earth and the water next mingled, becoming inseparable, and the spiritual world, which is called reason, moved upon their surface, causing endless turmoil. Then again was heard the voice of Poimandris, but his form was not revealed. I, thy God, and the light, and the mind, which were before substance was divided from spirit and darkness from light. And the word which appeared as a pillar of flame out of the darkness is the Son of God, born of the mystery of the mind. The name of that word is reason. Reason is the offspring of thought, and reason shall divide the light from the darkness, and establish truth in the midst of the waters. Understand, O Hermes, and meditate deeply upon the mystery. That which in you sees and hears is not of the earth, but is the word of God incarnate. So it is said that divine light dwells in the midst of mortal darkness, and ignorance cannot divide them. The union of the word and the mind produces that mystery which is called life. As the darkness without you is divided against itself, so the darkness within you is likewise divided. The light and the fire which rise are the divine man, ascending in the path of the word, and that which fails to ascend is the mortal man, which may not partake of immortality. Learn deeply of the mind and its mystery, for therein lies the secret of immortality. The dragon again revealed its form to Hermes, and for a long time the two looked steadfastly, one upon the other, eye to eye, so that Hermes trembled before the gaze of Poimandris. At the word of the dragon, the heavens opened, and the innumerable light powers were revealed, soaring through cosmos on pinions of streaming fire. Hermes beheld the spirits of the stars, the celestials controlling the universe, and all those powers which shine with the radiance of the one fire, the glory of the sovereign mind. Hermes realized that the sight which he beheld was revealed to him only because Poimandres had spoken a word. The word was reason, and by the reason of the word, invisible things were made manifest. Divine Mind, the dragon, continued its discourse. Before the visible universe was formed, its mold was cast. This mold was called the archetype, and this archetype was in the Supreme Mind long before the process of creation began. Beholding the archetypes, the Supreme Mind became enamored with its own thought. So, taking the word as a mighty hammer, it gouged out caverns in primordial space, and cast the form of the spheres in the archetypal mold, at the same time sowing in the newly fashioned bodies the seeds of living things. The darkness below, receiving the hammer of the word, was fashioned into an orderly universe. The elements separated into strata, and each brought forth living creatures. The Supreme Being, the Mind, male and female, brought forth the Word, and the Word, suspended between light and darkness, was delivered of another mind, called the Workman, the Master Builder, or the Maker of Things. In this manner it was accomplished, O Hermes. The Word, moving like a breath through space, called forth the fire by the friction of its motion. Therefore, the fire is called the Sun of Striving. The workman passed as a whirlwind through the universe, causing the substances to vibrate and glow with its friction. The Sun of Striving thus formed 7 governors, the spirits of the planets, whose orbits bounded the world, and the 7 governors controlled the world by the mysterious power called destiny, given them by the fiery workman. When the second mind, the workman, had organized chaos, the word of God rose straightway out of its prison of substance, leaving the elements without reason, and joined itself to the nature of the fiery workman. Then the second mind, together with the risen word, established itself in the midst of the universe, and whirled the wheels of the celestial powers. This shall continue, from an infinite beginning to an infinite end, for the beginning and the ending are in the same place and state. Then the downward turned and unreasoning elements brought forth creatures without reason. Substance could not bestow reason, for reason had ascended out of it. The air produced flying things, and the waters such things as swim. The earth conceived strange 4-footed and creeping beasts, dragons, composite demons, and grotesque monsters. Then the Father, the Supreme Mind, being light and life, fashioned a glorious universal man in its own image, not an earthly man, but a heavenly man dwelling in the light of God. The Supreme Mind loved the man it had fashioned, and delivered to him the control of the creations and workmanships. The man, desiring to labor, took up his abode in the sphere of generation, and observed the works of his brother, the second mind, which sat upon the ring of the fire. And having beheld the achievements of the fiery workman, he willed also to make things, and his father gave permission. The 7 governors, of whose powers he partook, rejoiced, and each gave the man a share of its own nature. The man longed to pierce the circumference of the circles, and understand the mystery of him who sat upon the eternal fire. Having already all power, he stooped down and peeped through the 7 harmonies, and, breaking through the strength of the circles, made himself manifest to nature stretched out below. The man, looking into the depths, smiled, for he beheld a shadow upon the earth, and a likeness mirrored in the waters, which shadow and likeness were a reflection of himself. The man fell in love with his own shadow and desired to descend into it. Coincident with the desire, the intelligent thing united itself with the unreasoning image or shape. Nature, beholding the descent, wrapped herself about the man whom she loved, and the two were mingled. For this reason, earthly man is composite. Within him is the sky man, immortal and beautiful. Without is nature, mortal and destructible. Thus, suffering is the result of the immortal man's falling in love with his shadow, and giving up reality to dwell in the darkness of illusion. For, being immortal, man has the power of the seven governors, also the life, the light, and the word. But being mortal, he is controlled by the rings of the governors, fate or destiny. Of the immortal man it should be said that he is hermaphrodite, or male and female, and eternally watchful. He neither slumbers nor sleeps, and is governed by a father also both male and female, and ever watchful. Such is the mystery kept hidden to this day. For nature, being mingled in marriage with the sky man, brought forth a wonder most wonderful. 7 men, all bisexual, male and female, and upright of stature, each one exemplifying the natures of the 7 governors. These, O Hermes, are the 7 races, species, and wheels. After this manner were the 7 men generated. Earth was the female element, and water the male element, and from the fire and the ether they received their spirits. And nature produced bodies after the species and shapes of men. And man received the life and light of the great dragon, and of the life was made his soul, and of the light his mind. And so, all these composite creatures, containing immortality, but partaking of mortality, continued in this state for the duration of a period. They reproduced themselves out of themselves, for each was male and female. But at the end of the period, the knot of destiny was untied by the will of God, and the bond of all things was loosened. Then all living creatures, including man, which had been hermaphroditical, were separated, the males being set apart by themselves, and the females likewise, according to the dictates of reason. Then God spoke to the holy word within the soul of all things, saying, Increase in increasing, and multiply in multitudes, all you, my creatures and workmanships. Let him that is endued with mind know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body. And let him learn all things that are, for he who has recognized himself enters into the state of good. And when God had said this, Providence, with the aid of the 7 governors in harmony, brought the sexes together, making the mixtures and establishing the generations, and all things were multiplied according to their kind. He who through the error of attachment loves his body, abides wandering in darkness, sensible and suffering the things of death. But he who realizes that the body is but the tomb of his soul, rises to immortality. Then, Hermes desired to know why men should be deprived of immortality for the sin of ignorance alone. The great dragon answered, To the ignorant the body is supreme, and they are incapable of realizing the immortality that is within them. Knowing only the body which is subject to death, they believe in death, because they worship that substance which is the cause and reality of death. Then Hermes asked how the righteous and wise pass to God, to which Poimandrus replied, That which the word of God said, say I. Because the Father of all things consists of life and light, whereof man is made. If, therefore, a man shall learn and understand the nature of life and light, then he shall pass into the eternity of life and light. Hermes next inquired about the road by which the wise attained to life eternal, and Poimandrus continued, Let the man endued with a mind mark, consider, and learn of himself, and with the power of his mind divide himself from his not-self, and become a servant of reality. Hermes asked if all men did not have minds, and the great dragon replied, "Take heed what you say, for I am the mind, the eternal teacher. I am the father of the word, the redeemer of all men, and in the nature of the wise the word takes flesh. By means of the word the world is saved. I, Thought, or Thoth, the father of the word, the mind, come only unto men that are holy and good, pure and merciful, and that live piously and religiously. And my presence is an inspiration and a help to them. For when I come, they immediately know all things and adore the universal Father. Before such wise and philosophic ones die, they learn to renounce their senses, knowing that these are the enemies of their immortal souls. I will not permit the evil senses to control the bodies of those who love me, nor will I allow evil emotions and evil thoughts to enter them. I become as a porter or doorkeeper, and shut out evil, protecting the wise from their own lower nature. But to the wicked, the envious, and the covetous, I come not, for such cannot understand the mysteries of mind. Therefore, I am unwelcome. I leave them to the avenging demon that they are making in their own souls, for evil each day increases itself, and torments man more sharply. And each evil deed adds to the evil deeds that are gone before, until finally evil destroys itself. The punishment of desire is the agony of unfulfillment. Hermes bowed his head in thankfulness to the great dragon who had taught him so much, and begged to hear more concerning the ultimate of the human soul. So Poimandres resumed, "At death, the material body of man is returned to the elements from which it came, and the invisible, divine man ascends to the source from whence he came, namely the eighth sphere. The evil passes to the dwelling place of the demon, and the senses, feelings, desires, and body passions return to their source, namely the seven governors, whose natures in the lower man destroy, but in the invisible spiritual man give life. After the lower nature has returned to the brutishness, the higher struggles again to regain its spiritual estate. It ascends the 7 rings upon which sit the 7 governors, and returns to each their lower powers in this manner. Upon the first ring sits the moon, and to it is returned the ability to increase and diminish. Upon the second ring sits Mercury, and to it are returned machinations, deceit, and craftiness. Upon the third ring sits Venus, and to it are returned the lusts and passions. Upon the fourth ring sits the sun, and to this lord are returned ambitions. Upon the fifth ring sits Mars, and to it are returned rashness and profane boldness. Upon the sixth ring sits Jupiter, and to it are returned the sense of accumulation and riches. And upon the seventh ring sits Saturn, at the gate of chaos, and to it are returned falsehood and evil plotting. Then, being naked of all the accumulations of the 7 rings, the soul comes to the 8th sphere, namely, the ring of the fixed stars. Here, freed of all illusion, it dwells in the light, and sings praises to the Father, in a voice which only the pure of spirit may understand. Behold, O Hermes, there is a great mystery in the 8th sphere, for the Milky Way is the seed ground of souls, and from it they drop into the rings, and to the Milky Way they return again from the wheels of Saturn. But some cannot climb the 7-runged ladder of the rings, so they wander in darkness below, and are swept into eternity, with the illusion of sense and earthiness. The path to immortality is hard, and only a few find it. The rest await the great day when the wheels of the universe shall be stopped, and the immortal spark shall escape from the sheaths of substance. Woe unto those who wait, for they must return again, unconscious and unknowing, to the seed ground of stars, and await a new beginning. Those who are saved by the light of the mystery which I have revealed unto you, O Hermes, and which I now bid you to establish among men, shall return again to the Father, who dwelleth in the white light, and shall deliver themselves up to the light, and shall be absorbed into the light. And in the light they shall become powers in God. This is the way of good, and is revealed only to them that have wisdom. Blessed art thou, O Son of Light, to whom of all men I, Poimandris, the light of the world, have revealed myself. I order you to go forth, to become as a guide to those who wander in darkness, that all men within whom dwells the spirit of my mind, the universal mind, may be saved by my mind in you, which shall call forth my mind in them. Establish my mysteries, and they shall not fail from the earth. For I am the mind of the mysteries, and until mind fails, which is never, my mysteries cannot fail. With these parting words, Poimandris, radiant with celestial light, vanished, mingling with the powers of the heavens. Raising his eyes unto the heavens, Hermes blessed the Father of all things, and consecrated his life to the service of the great light. Thus preached Hermes: O people of the earth, men born and made of the elements, but with the spirit of the divine man within you, rise from your sleep of ignorance. Be sober and thoughtful. Realize that your home is not in the earth, but in the light. Why have you delivered yourselves over unto death, having power to partake of immortality? Repent and change your minds. Depart from the dark light and forsake corruption forever. Prepare yourselves to climb through the 7 rings and to blend your souls with the eternal light. Some who heard mocked and scoffed and went their way, delivering themselves to the second death, from which there is no salvation. But others, casting themselves before the feet of Hermes, besought him to teach them the way of life. He lifted them gently, receiving no approbation for himself, and staff in hand, went forth teaching and guiding mankind, and showing them how they might be saved. In the worlds of men, Hermes sowed the seeds of wisdom, and nourished the seeds with the immortal waters. And at last came the evening of his life, and as the brightness of the light of earth was beginning to go down, Hermes commanded his disciples to preserve his doctrines inviolate throughout all ages. The vision of Poimandris he committed to writing, that all men desiring immortality might therein find the way. In concluding his exposition of the vision, Hermes wrote, "The sleep of the body is the sober watchfulness of the mind, and the shutting of my eyes reveals the true light. My silence is filled with budding life and hope, and is full of good. My words are the blossoms of fruit of the tree of my soul. For this is the faithful account of what I received from my true mind, that is, Poimandris, the great dragon, the Lord of the Word, through whom I became inspired by God with the truth. Since that day, my mind has been ever with me, and in my own soul it hath given birth to the Word. The Word is reason, and reason hath redeemed me. For which cause, with all my soul and all my strength, I give praise and blessing unto God the Father, the life and the light, and the eternal good. Holy is God, the Father of all things, the one who is before the first beginning. Holy is God, whose will is performed and accomplished by his own powers, which he hath given birth to out of himself. Holy is God, who has determined that he shall be known, and who is known by his own, to whom he reveals himself. Holy art thou, who by thy word, reason, hast established all things. Holy art thou, of whom all nature is the image. Holy art thou, whom the inferior nature has not formed. Holy art thou, who art stronger than all powers. Holy art thou, who art greater than all excellency. Holy art thou, who art better than all praise. Accept these reasonable sacrifices from a pure soul, and a heart stretched out unto thee. O thou unspeakable, unutterable, to be praised with silence! I beseech thee to look mercifully upon me, that I may not err from the knowledge of thee, and that I may enlighten those that are in ignorance, my brothers and thy sons. Therefore I believe thee, and bear witness unto thee, and depart in peace, and in trustfulness into thy light and life. Blessed art thou, O Father! The man thou hast fashioned would be sanctified with thee, as thou hast given him power to sanctify others with thy word and thy truth. The vision of Hermes, like nearly all of the Hermetic writings, is an allegorical exposition of great philosophic and mystic truths, and its hidden meaning may be comprehended only by those who have been raised into the presence of the true mind. This has been The Life and Teachings of Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, written by Manly P. Hall, narrated by Arthur Rowan.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Hold tight, Prophet. I got another book for you.
This is Audible. The Human Body in Symbolism, Esoteric Classics, written by Manly P. Hall, narrated by Michael Strader. Introduction. The word esoteric can be difficult to define. Esotericism in general can be seen less as a system of beliefs and more as a category which encompasses numerous different systems of beliefs. It's a bit of juxtaposition, since the word esoteric indicates something that few people know about, while the term itself broadly covers numerous philosophies, practices, areas of study, and belief systems. In a greater sense, esotericism acts as a storehouse for secret knowledge, which is often considered ancient by tradition, if not by fact, passed down from generation to generation in private. At various times in history, simply possessing the knowledge of some of these subjects was considered illegal and a jailable offense if discovered. This usually included such general topics as alchemy, Kabbalah, Hermeticism, occultism, ceremonial magic, astrology, divination, Rosicrucianism, and so on. Collectively, these areas of study were often referred to as the esoteric sciences. Sometimes the outer garment of a subject isn't esoteric, while what is hidden beneath it is. As an example, Freemasonry isn't necessarily esoteric by nature, at least not anymore. But certain signs, passwords, and handshakes given to the candidate during their initiation are in fact esoteric in the sense that they are hidden from the general public. Today, in the 21st century, such topics are readily available at bookstores across the country, and numerous mainstream publishers offer beginner's guides and coffee table volumes on many of these subjects intended for mass appeal. Books like The Secret have turned previously arcane topics into household knowledge. All that being the case, however, it isn't to say that there still aren't buried secrets to uncover, ancient wisdom being ignored, and forgotten mysteries to be explored. In fact, it is often that we are only able to further our own studies by standing on the shoulders of these disappearing giants. Lamp of Trismegistus is doing its part to help preserve humanity's esoteric history by making some of these classics available to those students who are seeking to unearth the knowledge of these ancient colossi. So be sure to check out our other titles in this series, as well as our Secrets of Alchemy series, Rosicrucian Collection, Theosophical Classics, and our Foundations of Freemasonry series. Human body in symbolism. The oldest, the most profound, and the most universal of all symbols is the human body. The Greeks, Persians, Egyptians, and Hindus considered a philosophical analysis of man's triune nature to be an indispensable part of ethical and religious training. The mysteries of every nation taught that the laws, elements, and powers of the universe were epitomized in the human constitution, that everything which existed outside of man had its analog within man. The universe, being immeasurable in its immensity and inconceivable in its profundity, was beyond mortal estimation. Even the gods themselves could comprehend but a part of the inaccessible glory which was their source. When temporarily permeated with divine enthusiasm, man may transcend for a brief moment the limitations of his own personality and behold in part that celestial effulgence in which all creation is bathed. But even in his periods of greatest illumination, man is incapable of imprinting upon the substance of his rational soul a perfect image of the multiform expression of celestial activity. Recognizing the futility of attempting to cope intellectually with that which transcends the comprehension of the rational faculties, the early philosophers turned their attention from the inconceivable divinity to man himself, within the narrow confines of whose nature they found manifested all the mysteries of the external spheres. As the natural outgrowth of this practice, there was fabricated a secret theological system in which God was considered as the grand man, and conversely, man as the little God. Continuing this analogy, the universe was regarded as a man, and conversely, man as a miniature universe. The greater universe was termed the macrocosm, the great world or body, and the divine life or spiritual entity controlling its functions was called the macroprosophos. Man's body, or the individual human universe, was termed the microcosm, and the divine life or spiritual entity controlling its functions was called the microprosophos. The pagan mysteries were primarily concerned with instructing neophytes in the true relationship existing between the macrocosm and the microcosm. In other words, between God and man. Accordingly, the key to these analogies between the organs and functions of the microcosmic man and those of the macrocosmic man constituted the most prized possession of the early initiates. In Isis Unveiled, H.P. Blavatsky summarizes the pagan concept of man as follows. Man is a little world, a microcosm inside the great universe. Like a fetus, he is suspended by all his three spirits in the matrix of the macrocosmos, and while his terrestrial body is in constant sympathy with its parent Earth, his astral soul lives in unison with the sidereal anima mundi. He is in it as it is in him. For the world-pervading element fills all space and is space itself, only shoreless and infinite. As to his third spirit, the divine, what is it but an infinitesimal ray, one of the countless radiations proceeding directly from the highest cause, the spiritual light of the world? This is the trinity of organic and inorganic nature, the spiritual and the physical, which are three in one, and of which Proclus says that the first monad is the eternal God, the second eternity, the third the paradigm or pattern of the universe, the three constituting the intelligible triad. Long before the introduction of idolatry into religion, the early priests caused the statue of a man to be placed in the sanctuary of the temple. This human figure symbolized the divine power in all its intricate manifestations. Thus, the priests of antiquity accepted man as their textbook, and through the study of him learned to understand the greater and more abstruse mysteries of the celestial scheme of which they were a part. It is not improbable that this mysterious figure standing over the primitive altars was made in the nature of a mannequin, and, like certain emblematic hands in the mystery schools, was covered with either carved or painted hieroglyphs. The statue may have opened, thus showing the relative positions of the organs, bones, muscles, nerves, and other parts. After ages of research, the mannequin became a mass of intricate hieroglyphs and symbolic figures. Every part had its secret meaning. The measurements formed a basic standard by means of which it was possible to measure all parts of cosmos. It was a glorious composite emblem of all the knowledge possessed by the sages and hierophants. Then came the age of idolatry. The mysteries decayed from within. The secrets were lost, and none knew the identity of the mysterious man who stood over the altar. It was remembered only that the figure was a sacred and glorious symbol of the universal power, and it finally came to be looked upon as a god, the one in whose image man was made. Having lost the knowledge of the purpose for which the mannequin was originally constructed, the priests worshipped this effigy until at last their lack of spiritual understanding brought the temple down in ruins about their heads, and the statue crumbled with the civilization that had forgotten its meaning. Proceeding from this assumption of the first theologians that man is actually fashioned in the image of God, the initiated minds of past ages erected the stupendous structure of theology upon the foundation of the human body. The religious world of today is almost totally ignorant of the fact that the science of biology is the fountainhead of its doctrines and tenets. Many of the codes and laws believed by modern divines to have been direct revelations from divinity are in reality the fruitage of ages of patient delving into the intricacies of the human constitution and the infinite wonders revealed by such a study. In nearly all the sacred books of the world can be traced an anatomical analogy. This is most evident in their creation myths. Anyone familiar with embryology and obstetrics will have no difficulty in recognizing the basis of the allegory concerning Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, the 9 degrees of the Eleusinian mysteries, and the Brahmanic legend of Vishnu's incarnations, the story of the universal egg, the Scandinavian myth of Ginnungagap, the dark cleft in space in which the seed of the world is sown, and the use of the fish as the emblem of the paternal generative power, all show the true origin of theological speculation. The philosophers of antiquity realized that man himself was the key to the riddle of life, for he was the living image of the divine plan. And in future ages, humanity also will come to realize more fully the solemn import of those ancient words. The proper study of mankind is man. Both God and man have a twofold constitution, of which the superior part is invisible and the inferior visible. In both, there is also an intermediary sphere, marking the point where these visible and invisible natures meet. As the spiritual nature of God controls his objective universal form, which is actually a crystallized idea, so the spiritual nature of man is the invisible cause and controlling power of his visible material personality. Thus, it is evident that the spirit of man bears the same relationship to his material body that God bears to the objective universe. The mysteries taught that spirit or life was anterior to form, and that what is anterior includes all that is posterior to itself. Spirit being anterior to form, form is therefore included within the realm of spirit. It is also a popular statement or belief that man's spirit is within his body. According to the conclusions of philosophy and theology, however, this belief is erroneous, for spirit first circumscribes an area and then manifests within it. Philosophically speaking, form, being a part of spirit, is within spirit, but spirit is more than the sum of form. As the material nature of man is therefore within the sum of spirit, so the universal nature, including the entire sidereal system, is within the all-pervading essence of God, the universal spirit. According to another concept of the ancient wisdom, all bodies, whether spiritual or material, have 3 centers called by the Greeks the upper center, the middle center, and the lower center. An apparent ambiguity will here be noted. To diagram or symbolize adequately abstract mental verities is impossible, for the diagrammatic representation of one aspect of metaphysical relationships may be an actual contradiction of some other aspect, while that which is above is generally considered superior in dignity and power. In reality, that which is in the center is superior and anterior to both that which is said to be above and that which is said to be below. Therefore, it must be said that the first, which is considered as being above, is actually in the center, while both of the others, which are said to be either above or below, are actually beneath. This point can be further simplified if the reader will consider above as indicating degree of proximity to source and below as indicating degree of distance from source. Source being posited in the actual center, and relative distance being the various points along the radii from the center toward the circumference. In matters pertaining to philosophy and theology, up may be considered as toward the center, and down as toward the circumference. Center is spirit, circumference is matter. Therefore, up is toward spirit along an ascending scale of spirituality, down is toward matter along an ascending scale of materiality. The latter concept is partly expressed by the apex of a cone, which, when viewed from above, is seen as a point in the exact center of the circumference formed by the base of the cone. These three universal centers, the one above, the one below, and the link uniting them, represent three suns, or three aspects of one sun, centers of effulgence. These also have their analogies in the three grand centers of the human body, which, like the physical universe, is a demiurgic fabrication. The first of these suns, says Thomas Taylor, is analogous to light when viewed subsisting in its fountain, the sun. The second, to the light immediately proceeding from the sun. And the third, to the splendor communicated to other natures by this light. Since the superior, or spiritual center, is in the midst of the other two, its analog in the physical body is the heart, the most spiritual and mysterious organ in the human body. The second center, or the link between the superior and inferior worlds, is elevated to the position of greatest physical dignity, the brain. The third, or lower center, is relegated to the position of least physical dignity, but greatest physical importance, the generative system. Thus, the heart is symbolically the source of life, the brain, the link by which, through rational intelligence, life and form are united, and the generative system, or infernal creator, the source of that power by which the physical organisms are produced. The ideals and aspirations of the individual depend largely upon which of these three centers of power predominates in scope and activity of expression. In the materialist, the lower center is the strongest. In the intellectualist, the higher center. But in the initiate, the middle center, by bathing the two extremes in a flood of spiritual effulgence, controls wholesomely both the mind and the body. As light bears witness of life, which is its source, so the mind bears witness of the spirit, and activity in a still lower plane bears witness of intelligence. Thus the mind bears witness of the heart, while the generative system in turn bears witness of the mind. Accordingly, the spiritual nature is most commonly symbolized by a heart, the intellectual power by an opened eye, symbolizing the pineal gland or cyclopean eye, which is the two-faced Janus of the pagan mysteries, and the generative system by a flower, a staff, a cup, or a hand. While all the mysteries recognized the heart as the center of spiritual consciousness, they often purposely ignored this concept and used the heart in its exoteric sense as the symbol of the emotional nature. In this arrangement, the generative center represented the physical body, the heart, the emotional body, and the brain, the mental body. The brain represented the superior sphere, but after the initiates had passed through the lower degrees, they were instructed that the brain was the proxy of the spiritual flame dwelling in the innermost recesses of the heart. The student of esotericism discovers ere long that the ancients often resorted to various blinds to conceal the true interpretations of their mysteries. The substitution of the brain for the heart was one of these blinds. The 3 degrees of the ancient mysteries were, with few exceptions, given in chambers which represented the 3 great centers of the human and universal bodies. If possible, the temple itself was constructed in the form of the human body. The candidate entered between the feet and received the highest degree in the point corresponding to the brain. Thus, the first degree was the material mystery, and its symbol was the generative system. It raised the candidate through the various degrees of concrete thought. The second degree was given in the chamber corresponding to the heart, but represented the middle power, which was the mental link. Here the candidate was initiated into the mysteries of abstract thought and lifted as high as the mind was capable of penetrating. He then passed into the third chamber, which, analogous to the brain, occupied the highest position in the temple, but, analogous to the heart, was of the greatest dignity. In the brain chamber, the heart mystery was given. Here the initiate for the first time truly comprehended the meaning of those immortal words. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As there are 7 hearts in the brain, so there are 7 brains in the heart. But this is a matter of superphysics, of which little can be said at the present time. Proclus writes on this subject in the first book of On the Theology of Plato. Indeed, Socrates, in the first Alcibiades, rightly observes that the soul entering into herself will behold all other things, and deity itself. For verging to her own union and to the center of all life, laying aside multitude and the variety of all manifold powers which she contains, she ascends to the highest watchtower offerings. And as in the most holy of the mysteries, they say that the mystics at first meet with the multiform and many-shaped genera, which are hurled forth before the gods, but on entering the temple, unmoved and guarded by the mystic rites, they genuinely receive in their heart divine illumination, and divested of their garments, as they would say, participate of a divine nature. The same mode, as it appears to me, takes place in the speculation of wholes. For the soul,
I dropped that link in there. Prophet.
when looking at things posterior to herself, beholds the shadows and images of beings. But when she converts herself to herself, she evolves her own essence and the reasons which she contains. And at first, indeed, she only, as it were, beholds herself. But when she penetrates more profoundly into the knowledge of herself, she finds in herself both intellect,
Prophet.
and the orders of beings. When, however, she proceeds into her interior recesses and into the adytum, as it were, of the soul, she perceives
and
with her
blessings.
eye closed, without the aid of the lower mind, the genus of the gods and the unities of beings. For all things are in us psychically, and through this we are naturally capable of knowing all things by exciting the powers and the images of wholes which we contain. The initiates of old warned their disciples that an image is not a reality, but merely the objectification of a subjective idea. The image of the gods were not designed to be objects of worship, but were to be regarded merely as emblems or reminders of invisible powers and principles. Similarly, the body of man must not be considered as the individual, but only as the house of the individual, in the same manner that the temple was the house of God. In a state of grossness and perversion, man's body is the tomb or prison of a divine principle. In a state of unfoldment and regeneration, it is the house or sanctuary of the deity by whose creative powers it was fashioned. Personality is suspended upon a thread from the nature of being, declares the secret work. Man is essentially a permanent and immortal principle. Only his bodies pass through the cycle of birth and death. The immortal is the reality. The mortal is the unreality. During each period of earth life, reality thus dwells in unreality, to be liberated from it temporarily by death and permanently by illumination. While generally regarded as polytheists, the pagans gained this reputation not because they worshipped more than one god, but rather because they personified the attributes of this god.
DJ Chuck, you can come up if you want to. But that damn speaker know it pick up everything. I'm trying to pack my little cigarettes. Y'all can hear it. I'm spraying with a little air freshener. Y'all hear all that in the background. I said, damn, boy, look at this shit here. Now, look at here. Motherfucker started some shit last night, about 2, 3 o'clock this morning. You know how you can't be good to a narcissist now after he don't have that surgery. You know how being nice to him. You know how to do. You just can't be good to a nigga, can you? Now he act like he so sick. I told him last night, the unjust don't prosper.
Thereby creating a pantheon of posterior deities, each manifesting a part of what the one God manifested as a whole. The various pantheons of ancient religions, therefore, actually represent the cataloged and personified attributes of deity. In this respect, they correspond to the hierarchies of the Hebrew Kabbalists. All the gods and the goddesses of antiquity consequently have their analogies in the human body, as have also the elements, planets, and constellations which were assigned as proper vehicles for these celestials. 4 body centers are assigned to the elements, the 7 vital organs to the planets, the 12 principal parts and members to the zodiac, the invisible parts of man's divine nature to various supermundane deities, while the hidden God was declared to manifest through the marrow in the bones. It is difficult for many to realize that they are actual universes, that their physical bodies are a visible nature through the structure of which countless ways of living life are unfolding latent potentialities. Yet,
I
through
see
man's
you
physical
people.
body, not only are a mineral, a plant, and an animal kingdom evolving, but also unknown
Hold on a
classifications
second.
and divisions.
What you say now?
Can y'all hear me? Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Invisible spiritual life. Just as cells are infinitesimal units in the structure of man, so man is an infinitesimal unit in the structure of the universe. A theology based upon the knowledge and appreciation of these relationships is as profoundly.
I can hear you, DJ Chuck. I had my mic muted. You dropped down as soon as I said I can hear you. Hello, April Showers. How you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome.
As it is profoundly true. As man's physical body has 5 distinct and important extremities, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, of which the last governs the first 4, the number 5 has been accepted as the symbol of man. By its 4 corners, the pyramid symbolizes the arms and legs, and by its apex, the head, thus indicating that one rational power controls 4 irrational corners. The hands and feet are used to represent the 4 elements, of which the 2 feet are earth and water, and the 2 hands fire and air. The brain then symbolizes the sacred 5th element, aether, which controls and unites the other 4. If the feet are placed together and the arms outspread, man then symbolizes the cross with the rational intellect as the head or upper limb. The fingers and toes also have special significance. The toes represent the 10 commandments of the physical law, and the fingers the 10 commandments of the spiritual law.
Hey, that's some shit.
The 4 fingers on each hand represent the 4 elements, and the 3 phalanges of each finger represent the divisions of the element, so that in each hand there are 12 parts to the fingers, which are analogous to the signs of the zodiac, whereas the 2 phalanges and base of each thumb signify the threefold deity. The first phalange corresponds to the creative aspect, the second to the preservative aspect, and the base to the generative and destructive aspect. When the hands are brought together, the result is the 24 elders and the 6 days of creation. In symbolism, the body is divided vertically into halves, the right half being considered as light and the left half as darkness.
4 times 6 is what,
By
24?
those unacquainted with the true meaning of light and darkness, the light half was denominated spiritual and the left half material. Light is the symbol of objectivity, darkness of subjectivity. Light is a manifestation of life and is therefore posterior to life. That which is anterior to light is darkness, in which light exists temporarily, but darkness permanently. As life precedes light, its only symbol is darkness. And darkness is considered as the veil which must eternally conceal the true nature of abstract and undifferentiated being. In ancient times, men fought with their right arms and defended the vital centers with their left arms, on which was carried the protecting shield. The right half of the body was regarded, therefore, as offensive, and the left half defensive. For this reason also, the right side of the body was considered masculine, and the left side feminine.
And you know what? That's true. Because if you notice, your right side of the right side of your body, like your hand and your feet, is larger than your left side of your body. You ever notice that? I understand that. All your life they always said that, but now we're putting it all together.
Several authorities are of the opinion that the present prevalent right-handedness of the race is the outgrowth of the custom of holding the left hand in restraint for defensive purposes. Furthermore, as the source of being is in the primal darkness which preceded light, so the spiritual nature of man is in the dark part of his being. For the heart is on the left side.
That's right.
Among the curious misconceptions arising from the false practice of associating darkness with evil is one by which several early nations used the right hand for all constructive labors, and the left hand for only those purposes termed unclean and unfit for the sight of the gods. For the same reason, black magic was often referred to as the left-hand path, and heaven was said to be upon the right, and hell upon the left.
Left-hand cigarette, marijuana.
Some philosophers further declared that there were two methods of writing, one from left to right, which was considered the exoteric method, the other from right to left, which was considered esoteric. The exoteric writing was that which was done out or away from the heart, while the esoteric writing was that which, like the ancient Hebrew, was written toward the heart. The secret doctrine declares that every part and member of the body is epitomized in the brain, and in turn, that all that is in the brain is epitomized.
That's why, I always talk about when we was growing up and they had in the cartoons, that had the devil on the left shoulder and the angel on the right shoulder. I told you there was symbolism all our life, been right in our face. Even from a child, even in children love cartoons. He-Man, I came up in the generation of He-Man, She-Ra, the Power Rangers and the Transformers and all them. All that shit hold esoteric meaning. Even the movies. Because Transformers is one of my favorite movies. If you listen to when they was which one that was, I think it was Transformers, was it 2? When they was over there in Egypt and they had they said only a prime could defeat a prime. And then when he was up there in space talking to the chairman they call him the chairman of the board, he was chained up. And he said the energy never dies, it transforms. Remember that?
In the heart.
What's up? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Prophet? You still can't hear me?
Nope.
Prophet can hear me. I don't know what's going on. I got you here. Hold on a second here. Still can't hear me? I don't know what's going on.
Human head is frequently used to represent intelligence.
Welcome to the family. Together we break chains. Welcome. Thank you.
And self-knowledge. As the human body,
Can y'all hear me in the chat? Put a 1 in the chat if y'all can hear me.
its entirety is the most perfect known product of the Earth's evolution. It was employed to represent divinity, the highest appreciable state or condition. Artists attempting to portray deity often show only a hand emerging from an impenetrable cloud. The cloud signifies the unknowable divinity, concealed from man by human limitations. The hand signifies the divine activity,
we break chains.
the only part of God which is cognizable to the lower senses. The face consists of a natural trinity, the eyes representing the spiritual power which comprehends, the nostrils representing the preservative and vivifying power, and
DJ Chuck, you bringing me some subscribers. Much love to you, my brother. Much love, much love. Thank you, love, from the bottom of my heart.
mouth and ears representing the material demiurgic power of the lower world. The first sphere is eternally existent and is creative. The second sphere
y'all might hear me moving around a little bit because I'm gonna plug up my speaker, so it'll be hollered. Battery is low.
pertains to the mystery of the creative breath, and the third sphere to the creative word. By the word of God, the material universe was fabricated, and the 7 creative powers, or vowel sounds, which had been brought into existence by the speaking of the word, became the 7 Elohim, or deities by whose power and ministration the lower world was organized. Occasionally the deity is symbolized by an eye, an ear, a nose, or a mouth. By the first, divine awareness is signified. By the second, divine interest. By the third, divine vitality. And by the fourth, divine...
Okay, well, April Showers, thank you. Who sent April Showers over here? I know somebody told me that DJ Chuck sent them over here. Let me see who that was. B Sparrow. She said DJ Chuck sent her over here. Well, I appreciate you all. However y'all got here, I love y'all. I thank y'all for sharing me out, subscribing to me. I was at one point I was about ready to give up, but the Most High said, "Don't you do it? Don't get frustrated. Don't give up. Keep on pushing on." So that's what I did.
In command. The ancients did not believe that spirituality made men either righteous or rational, but rather that righteousness and rationality made men spiritual. The mysteries taught that the spiritual illumination was attained only by bringing the lower nature up to a certain standard of efficiency and purity. The mysteries were therefore established for the purpose of unfolding the nature of man according to certain fixed rules which, when faithfully followed, elevated the human consciousness to a point where it was capable of cognizing its own constitution and the true purpose of existence.
Mm-hmm.
This knowledge of how man's manifold constitution could be most quickly and most completely regenerated to the point of spiritual illumination constituted the secret or esoteric doctrine of antiquity. Certain apparently physical organs and centers are in reality the veils or sheaths of spiritual centers. What these were and how they could be unfolded was never revealed to the unregenerate. For the philosophers realized that once he understands the complete working of any system, a man may accomplish a prescribed end without being qualified to manipulate and control the effects which he has produced.
See, that's the thing right there. See, People have become corrupt over the time, over the year, over centuries, because the Freemasons, everybody go, they bash them. But see, that's true because but you got to look. It's not all of them. Because these regular Masons, they ain't got no damn power. You got to look at the ones with that money, the Illuminati, and those the Shriners and all them. See, they the ones holding the power. The Rothschilds and J.P. Morgan family and all them. See, the Rockefellers, them the ones running shit. They the ones back behind the scenes pulling the strings. But of course, we have some of these lower level, Freemasons. They corrupt too because they really not following the law of what Freemasonry really means. That's why people look so bad upon them, see, because they make people look bad at look at them in the wrong way. Because you're supposed to lead by example. See what I'm saying? You're supposed to be a leader, not a follower. So I mean, people can't help but make y'all a target. But if you live a righteous life the way you're supposed to live and treat people the way you're supposed to treat them, you can go according to the laws of Freemasonry, which is esoteric. What he's talking about, everything he's talking about is Freemasonry, esoteric. But they took advantage of it, see, because it was hidden. A cult. They took advantage of it, and those with the money, damn sure took advantage of it. They started, like he said, manipulating things because they already knew the secrets. But just like I tell you, that Bible is esoteric. We fight against principalities. The evil workers are what? The ones that work the evil. The ones in power, the big brothers. I tell everybody, I don't hate no one. Because I wasn't raised like that. I was raised to love everyone, no matter what your skin color is. And I believe that we all are one. Because see, what the whole deal is we all have been manipulated by the corporation, I should say. The corporation, they sitting back laughing at us. Look at the damn food, the black, the white, the blue, all of us. Because they all created division. They created division amongst all of us to serve their own self, their own self needs and their agendas. See what I'm saying? Ain't nobody better than the other. Because them ones with all them billions of dollars, they the ones that got everything off of us. Soul division when they knew the truth all along. And some people just too damn stubborn to realize the truth. We need to get out of that, We all need to come together. All of us, black, white, all of us, because we all fighting the same system. We don't need to fight each other. We need to fight them that's in power, not each other. Divide and conquer. That's the main rule of war. Divide and conquer. You can't stand when you got all these people separated. But when you got everybody together, then you can fight then, see? But until we can learn how to stand up and fight together, we'll never get anywhere.
For this reason, long periods of probation were imposed, so that the knowledge of how to become
they unhappy. But they the ones that rule everything. They the ones that's creating all the division. They the ones separating everybody. They the ones that rewrote history and told all the lies. I really don't like to get into the color thing, because like I said, we all one. Because if I start bleeding, if you start bleeding, if a white man start bleeding for AIDS, we all gonna bleed the same color. The blood in our veins is blue until it hit the oxygen, hit the air, then it turn red. We all are created in the Most High's image. That's what he said. Let us, just like they say, see how they twisted that thing. He said, "Let us make man in our image." That's how you know that there was more than one God. Even the Bible, even if you read the Bible right, the Old Testament God is different from the New Testament God. People read the surface level. They don't read the in-depth between the lines level. See? That thing that thing been reversed so much it don't make no if you reverse everything in that Bible, you still might not have half of the truth.
Might remain the sole possession of the worthy.
Exactly.
Lest that knowledge
Exactly.
be lost, however, it
Like
was
I say,
concealed.
look, they already don't separate the races. Now they trying to separate the genders. They trying to pit the men and the women against each other now. They already don't separate us against the whites and the black. They already don't did that. You know, now they trying to separate the families, basically. And these people too damn blind to see that shit.
In allegories and myths, which were meaningless to the profane, but self-evident to those acquainted with the theory of personal redemption, which was the foundation of philosophical theology. Christianity itself may be cited as an example. The entire New Testament is in fact an ingeniously concealed exposition of the secret processes of human regeneration.
Exactly.
The characters so long considered as historical men and women are really the personification of certain processes which take place in the human body when man begins the task of consciously liberating himself from the bondage of ignorance and death.
That's right.
The garments and ornamentations supposedly worn by the gods are also keys. For in the mysteries, clothing was considered as synonymous with form. The degree of spirituality or materiality of the organisms was signified by the quality, beauty, and value of the garments worn. Man's physical body was looked upon as the robe of his spiritual nature.
That's right.
Consequently, the more developed were his supersubstantial powers, the more glorious his apparel.
To quote the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he said, look here, he said, before you finish breakfast every morning, you depended upon half the world. So you cannot live in this world by yourself. We cannot do that. He said we must face the fact that we are all entwined in a single garment of destiny.
Of course, clothing was originally worn for ornamentation rather than protection, and such practice still prevails among many primitive peoples. The mysteries taught that man's only lasting adornments were his virtues and worthy characteristics, that he was clothed in his own accomplishments and adorned by his attainments. Thus, the white robe was symbolic of purity, the red robe of sacrifice and love, and the blue robe of altruism and integrity. Since the body was said to be the robe of the spirit, mental or moral deformities were depicted as deformities of the body. Considering man's body as the measuring rule of the universe, the philosophers declared that all things resemble in constitution, if not in form, the human body. The Greeks, for example, declared Delphi to be the navel of the earth. For the physical planet was looked upon as a gigantic human being twisted into the form of a ball. In contradistinction to the belief of Christendom that the earth is an inanimate thing, the pagans considered not only the earth, but also the sidereal bodies as individual creatures possessing individual intelligences. They even went so far as to view the various kingdoms of nature as individual entities. The animal kingdom, for example, was looked upon as one being, a composite of all the creatures composing that kingdom. This prototypic beast was a mosaic embodiment of all animal propensities, and within its nature the entire animal world existed as the human species exists within the constitution of the prototypic Adam. In the same manner, races, nations, tribes, religions, states, communities, and cities were viewed as composite entities, each made up of varying numbers of individual units. Every community has an individuality, which is the sum of the individual attitudes of its inhabitants. Every religion is an individual whose body is made up of a hierarchy and vast host of individual worshippers. The organization of any religion represents its physical body, and its individual members the cell life making up this organism. Accordingly, religions, races, and communities, like individuals, pass through Shakespeare's 7 ages, for the life of man is a standard by which the perpetuity of all things is estimated. According to the secret doctrine, man, through the gradual refinement of his vehicles and the ever-increasing sensitiveness resulting from that refinement, is gradually overcoming the limitations of matter and is disentangling himself from his mortal coil. When humanity has completed its physical evolution, the empty shell of materiality left behind will be used by other life waves as stepping stones to their own liberation. The trend of man's evolutionary growth is ever toward his own essential selfhood. At the point of deepest materialism, therefore, man is at the greatest distance from himself. According to the mystery teachings, not all the spiritual nature of man incarnates in matter. The spirit of man is diagrammatically shown as an equilateral triangle, with one point downward. This lower point, which is 1/3 of the spiritual nature, but in comparison to the dignity of the other two, is much less than 1/3, descends into the illusion of material existence for a brief space of time. That which never clothes itself in the sheath of matter is the hermetic anthropos, the overman, analogous to the Cyclops or guardian daemon of the Greeks, the angel of Jacob Boehme, and the oversoul of Emerson. That unity, that oversoul within which every man's particular being is contained and made one with all other. At birth, only a 1/3 part of the divine nature of man temporarily dissociates itself from its own immortality and takes upon itself the dream of physical birth and existence, animating with its own celestial enthusiasm a vehicle composed of material elements, part of and bound to the material sphere. At death, this incarnated part awakens from the dream of physical existence and reunites itself once more with its eternal condition. This periodical descent of spirit into matter is termed the wheel of life and death, and the principles involved are treated at length by the philosophers under the subject of metempsychosis. By initiation into the mysteries and a certain process known as operative theology, this law of birth and death is transcended, and during the course of physical existence, that part of the spirit which is asleep in form is awakened without the intervention of death, the inevitable initiator, and is consciously united with the anthropos, or the overshadowing substance of itself. This is at once the primary purpose and the consummate achievement of the mysteries. that man shall become aware of and consciously be reunited with the divine source of himself without tasting of physical disillusion.
All right, y'all. That's the end of that there. We're going to get into some ancient civilizations, the 7 symbols of Atlantis. Can y'all hear it?
Just outside the quaint town of Puente Viejo, Spain, is a cave system known as Monte Castillo. And within this system, a specific cave called El Castillo contains some of the oldest human cave paintings dating back to 41,000 years ago. For centuries, the focus of paleoanthropology has been the representational art that our ancestors left behind in caves. Eye-catching drawings of deer, horse, bison, and human figures. But in 2012, Genevieve von Petzinger, paleoanthropologist and researcher for the University of Victoria, discovered something overlooked by many experts. She analyzed ancient art from over 370 ancient caves all over the world and discovered that since antiquity, humans have been using the same 32 symbols, geometric signs that form some kind of alphabet. Von Petzinger suggests that the 32 signs do seem to have communicative properties, and we can possibly trace the origins of our first writing system back to these ancient symbols. How do the symbols that we see today in our religions, our flags, and our institutions connect us to an ancient past that we have barely scratched the surface of understanding? And when this is revealed, what will it say about humanity and its future?
The use of symbols to communicate ideas goes back into our history long before language was even created. When we talk about the study of symbols today, there are different kinds of symbols that we become accustomed to, sometimes without even thinking about it. There is a form of language that has no
Can y'all hear it
words
good?
and
Or do
no
I need to turn it up
sound,
in it?
and I'm fascinated by this form because it may represent one of the most advanced and sophisticated forms of communication. That's called an ideogram. And an ideogram does precisely what it suggests. It is a symbol.
Oh, I thought you knew. I'm a deep
that
individual.
represents
DJ
an
Chuck.
entire idea or an entire concept without ever uttering a word or a phrase or a sound to describe that idea, and without needing the complex language of alphabet to describe the nuances of that idea.
If these symbols are more complex than our current written language, does the infamous number 32 have any correlation to the ancient past?
The significance of the number 32 in the Western occult tradition is highly significant, and it has to do with the so-called Tree of Life on the Kabbalah. So on the Tree of Life on the Kabbalah, there are 10 what are called sephira, or spheres. Each one of these spheres is supposed to depict a different aspect of being. They also seem to depict other dimensions. And there are 22 paths that lead from Sephira to Sephira. Now, those 22 paths match the 22 trumps in the tarot deck, which I don't have to tell people is extremely mysterious.
I see what I'm talking about, Prophet. I told you the tarot is spiritual. I told you that. See how everything that I've been broadcasting, it all links up to what? Tarot.
Nobody knows really where the
tarot is the ain't nothing but it's telling the soul's journey through life.
Where that came from. It just appears with all of this knowledge. Now, each one of the 22 trumps in the tarot is equated to one of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And since the Hebrew alphabet letters are equated to a numerical value, you have a perfect system of basically what you're seeing. So these 22 paths, represented by numbers, are the frequencies that separate.
Hold tight, yeah. Look at that. See if y'all can see it. Shit. I might need to widen my screen. Hold on a second here. Okay. See?
Rate these different dimensions one from the other, and you're looking at a map, an ancient map, left to humanity about that knowledge.
Could this ancient map of 32 correlate with the 32 ancient symbols used around the world almost 40,000 years ago? Where could this map be leading us? One thing is for sure, that some of these ancient symbols seem to be burned into our subconscious.
So we have to ask, how is it possible that these symbols stay around for thousands upon thousands of years? Why does culture after culture adopt these symbols? There must be an inherent meaning. One explanation is the study of phosphenes. When NASA astronauts first went into outer space, they would look towards the center of the galaxy and cosmic rays would ping off the retina of their eye, and they started seeing various symbols, crosses, hash marks, spirals, and it led to NASA having to redesign the astronauts' helmets so that it would deflect the cosmic rays. And this led to a theory that perhaps some of these symbols are hardwired into our DNA.
Whether this be the cross on a Christian church or the crescent upon an Islamic mosque, all of these symbols are there to instill a certain emotional reaction, one that will trigger deep within us a connection with the sacred, with the divine, with the otherworldly. And these symbols have been used for tens of thousands of years, and of course, we still see them as important today.
If we take these ancient 32 symbols and we look through antiquity, we can see how they have been formed into much more concrete images. But these concrete images began to hold a certain frequency and meaning throughout time, meanings we still hold today. Experts suggest there are 7 main ones: the Vesica Piscis, the Star of David, the Ankh, the Cross, the Chicana, the Swastika, and the Crescent Moon. If we go back into antiquity, how has the meaning of these symbols changed? And most importantly, how do all of these symbols bring us back to an ancient civilization known as Atlantis? These symbols changed, and most importantly, how do all of these symbols bring us back to an ancient civilization known as Atlantis? We first start with the star and crescent. It is an iconographic symbol used in various historical contexts, but is best known today as a symbol of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, and Pakistan. It is also often considered as a symbol of Islam by extension. Andrew Collins and Freddie Silva suggest this ancient symbol was possibly connected with the cycle of the moon and its feminine origin.
Right.
The crescent symbol is not simply a sign of the moon, but it is the symbol of the cycle of life itself that was defined from very earliest times by the periodicity of the moon, the different phases that it would take, and its effect not only upon the tides and water, but also upon the human bodily cycle, particularly that within the female cycle.
One of the earliest recorded uses of the crescent symbol was the goddess Sin in Babylon, and before that in Sumeria. Now, there's an interesting overlap here because her original name was Sin, which means that...
Hold on, I'm trying to back it so y'all can see it.
Cycle.
One of the earliest recorded uses of the crescent symbol was the goddess Sin in Babylon, and before that in Sumeria. Now, there's an interesting overlap here because her original name was Sin, which means that by the time you get to the historical era in Christianity and you have sinners, it meant that the church, who understood these concepts and they wanted to take the women and the divine bloodline out of the whole equation,
exactly,
they began to associate sin with the lunar concept by making the number 13 unlucky. It's elemental because there are 13 lunations in every solar year. So 12 months of the solar year, there are 13 lunar cycles. So the number 13 is always synonymous with the moon. With the moon, Sin, who is the lunar goddess of the Babylonians, is a sinner.
In Latin, the Vesica Piscis simply means bladder of the fish. You can find this symbol in paintings of Christ and the Buddha, and it can also be found in sacred geometry.
Hold on, let me back it up. I was trying to turn the light off so you won't have that glare on there.
Meant that the church, who understood these concepts and they wanted to take the women and the divine bloodline out of the whole equation, they began to associate sin with the lunar concept by making the number 13 unlucky. It's elemental because there are 13 lunations in every solar year. So 12 months of the solar year, there are 13 lunar cycles. So the number 13 is always synonymous with the moon. With the moon, Sin, who is the lunar goddess of the Babylonians, is a sinner.
In Latin, the Vesica Piscis simply means bladder of the fish. You can find this symbol in paintings of Christ and the Buddha, and it can also be found in sacred geometry and Roman depictions. Freddie suggests that the symbol has been known through antiquity as a symbol of all-knowing and the creative force behind it.
You see that eye?
If you take it at its basic level, the understanding that the universe starts with the creative force, which is symbolized by the circle. And that circle is all-knowing, it's all representative. Okay, everything exists in that circle, and paradoxically, it doesn't exist outside it. Well, how does the energy in that circle know what's outside it? Well, it begins to separate. And once it separates, it goes from its divine nature into its divine opposites. So there's a tension of opposites that takes place because both circumferences are placed on the center of each circle. It was made very popular by the Greeks and certainly made very popular during the Christian era because if you take the center of the Vesica Piscis with the two arms extended, you create the sign of the fish, which brings us back again to the esoteric tradition of Jesus and the tradition that he was following, which is to do with early Gnostic Christianity, which is an offshoot of Egyptian principles and other principles that came back from the time of the gods.
The Star of David, a hexagram shape, is mostly associated with the Jewish community and to the first King David. The earliest depictions were used in medieval Arabic literature by Kabbalists as talismanic protective amulets, where it was known as the Seal of Solomon among Muslims. Sonia Grace suggests this star goes far beyond the representation of King David, and it represents the idea of freedom within the universe.
The Star of David has much older origins, dating back to the beginning of this phase of humanity in Egypt, 10,000 BC. It was created in likeness of the pyramids, but also represents what so much.
You better glad I love y'all. I ain't gonna keep sitting up here holding my arm up here that y'all see. When I get, a little more organized, I be able to, project them, be able to project these images on a screen or something. But I'm trying to do my best.
Of Egyptian mythology talks about, which is duality. The Star of David was adapted by Moses and Abraham because they understood what the pyramids were actually used for.
Yeah,
so they adapted
for
that
looking at the stars and stuff.
Because they were trying to flee Egypt and not be enslaved. In the pagan religion, it was also used as a transport symbol. It was really a symbol to free the people.
The swastika symbol can be found in some Asian temples and in Tibet as a symbol of prosperity. But to most people in the West, it refers to the evil connected with the Nazi regime during the Second World War.
See how they make everything turn everything into evil?
To go back even further, and its meaning represents an ancient power that can manifest.
See the swastika there? I'll back it up some for you.
So they adapted that symbology because they were trying to flee Egypt and not be enslaved. In the pagan religion, it was also used as a transport symbol. It was really a symbol to free the people.
The swastika symbol can be found in some Asian temples and in Tibet as a symbol of prosperity. But to most people in the West, it refers to the evil connected with the Nazi regime during the Second World War. But its origin seems to go back even further, and its meaning represents an ancient power that can manifest in its center.
The origin of the swastika is dated to 12,000 years ago in the Ukraine. We have found an ivory figurine with the swastika etched on it. It then gets transferred into the Nordic realm. It's used throughout ancient Europe. And then it moves into Asia, where it becomes a symbol adopted by the Hindus and the Buddhists. Almost everywhere the swastika appears, it's a symbol of life, of luck, and prosperity.
Without the spiral, nothing can grow. A plant can't grow without the spiral motion. Blood can't flow through the veins of the human body without moving in a spiral pattern. Blood doesn't move that way, it moves that way. So without that spiral motion, and without those four elements in balance, you have nothing.
The ancients were very aware of the swastika, and to them, it represented a kind of portal area, a vortex, what they call a four-armed vortex. And that would represent what they would call a very strong energy center. So in terms of geomancy, it does represent that it would be a vortex.
And then another thing, people always be talking shit about our non-melanated brothers and sisters. But hell, they're the main ones that really bringing all the documentation and the truth out.
The swastika, and it's a very powerful type of vortex.
The Ankh and the cross similarly are associated with Egypt. The Ankh is one of the most recognizable symbols from ancient Egypt, known as the key of life or the cross of life. Its association with the afterlife made it a popular, potent symbol for the Coptic Christians of Egypt. But experts suggest these are both the representations of power beyond this realm.
Really, if you go into deep antiquity, you discover that the Ankh predates Egypt, predates the land of Chem. It's antediluvial. So when you look at the information from the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and you discover that Enki and Enlil had access to something called a Duran key, which was also something called a bond heaven-earth, where they would walk from Earth into their home planet and back again. Only the elite of the elite had access to this. And in order to activate these stargates, you had to have a Jed Pillar Ankh in your hand. So the Ankh itself would have this jet inside of it, and this jet looks similar to a Tesla coil, ironically. And then you had the Ankh itself. Now, this Ankh was technology along with this jet, and it was oscillator, and it would oscillate at the frequency of the atomic structure of the owner of the Ankh. And if you didn't match the right frequency, you couldn't walk through the Stargate.
Not far from the source of the Ankh derived another symbol.
As far back as I can work out, the cross really happens in Egypt. So the cross literally represents the materialization of the invisible into the physical plane. This eventually gets added to the mysteries teachings, and it becomes part of the initiation concepts. So going back to, as far as I can work out, 6000 BC, they come back risen from the dead, and at that moment they're applied the symbol of the man or the woman who is nailed to a wooden post or a beam or a cross, which means that by the time we get to the Roman era, this is a very profound symbol.
There is one more symbol that looks like a cross, but it is called the Chicana. On the other side of the world, mostly in South America, a cross made out of cubes graces the presence of even the Nazca area. But this symbol also suggests a passage through to another world.
The Chicana is the equal-armed cross of the Peruvian Andes. Many different cultures use this. And in the center of it, it has a hole. And this hole was said by the Incas and various other cultures to allow the divine influence to come through the center of the cross into the physical world and into human beings.
The Chicana cross is one of the most important symbols to the Incas. It's a simple 3-step cross that actually encodes their view on life. One of the steps represents the stellar realm, the celestial realm, and the celestial bodies. The second step represents earth life and all that we experience on earth. And the third step represents the afterlife and the underworld.
If we have reused these images over and over again, what is the significance? Is there an even deeper meaning to their origin than stated? Matthias de Stephanos suggests that all these symbols were actually part of an ancient technology ingrained in our minds, left over from the Atlantean time period. A machine designed to change realities.
The main technology of Atlantis was what we call the Proticta. Proticta was something that was brought from another planet, from another world, but it's something that you can really build here and to work with that with minerals that we have in this world, because the Proticta is just a projection, a fractal of the construction of all realities.
If there really was a technology designed from ancient times, how then do all these symbols that seem to be placed in our consciousness work together to create this device?
So you had to understand the spirituality within in order to figure out how the technology worked. And this created the symbols that made every culture after it to be together. These 33 cubes in many dimensions was the main technology to create the free energy to create new realities. So whoever accomplished to reach the 33 cubes, the 33 steps of the body, of the mind, of the soul, would be enlightened and would be like God, able to create realities. When you get that cube and you cut it in the middle, you will have the second dimension. The second dimension will show you that these 27 cubes with these other 6 around are only 4 around with the shape of a square. This creates the Chicana. The Chicana is the symbol from the South American cultures with the hole within, which is the main core of the vacuum. So everyone could know about the stairs to the creation. There is no up, there is no below, there is no east and west. All the path is together the same. Everything is a cycle, and the only thing existing is the void in the center. This pattern inside, taking this Merkaba that creates the cube, when we cut it in the middle, we have the Star of David. The Star of David would be the symbol to help us recognize that we are trinities in matter. So some cultures took the Star of David like a symbol to understand that we are vibration, energy, matter, will, love, and wisdom. By taking the spinning of this Merkaba, we will have the main line that aligns the self. This alignment of the self would be the central code that creates the spinning of every one of the chakras. And when all these chakras are aligned from the heart, the center of the system, there's another light that goes to the expansion of the universe, not only vertical, but also horizontal. And then not only the relation would be from the creator to the creation, but also helping to understand that from the heart, we can become our own creators of our own reality. Then we have this star that is shining in the center by the Star of David. And when we see that shape, we will find the shape of the torus around, creating like a half of the moon. And this is the Islam symbol. And that every region in its core have Muslim, Hebrew, Christianity, and all the other religions, like in South America, like in Egypt, they all have the symbols coming from the Protikta. So from this cross that the Christians have, from the main core of the system, the energy goes and flows towards the outside and going back to the main core to recreate constantly the same energy. And that's create the key of life. The symbol of the key of life is the one that connects the whole pattern of energy. And also by connecting the spheres, touching every one of the nodes, we have the flower of life, which is the symbol that connects biology, that connects every geometry and every code of life. So the Protikta, coming from the void, projecting its reality as a machine, it's the symbol that puts together everything. It's the symbol that puts together every belief, every reality, every science, every religion, every spirituality, the soul, the emotion. Everything has its place in that machine that we call life.
If this is true, why are they all scattered across the world with different meanings, with a never-ending belief system that they will never be as one?
In the third dimension, the concepts are all divided. They are all spread. That's why we call it sciences, we call it religions, we call it philosophies, spirituality. We call it all separated because in the third dimension, we see everything separated. So you can go at any one of those paths and you will find coherence. That's the step of the enlightenment. That's the step when you understand, when you connect with all the ideas, and we think that technology is the only answer. And for the ancients, this technology was spiritual. In order to get to the awareness of how to use this, you needed to be someone spiritual. And by spiritual, it doesn't mean to believe. It doesn't mean to have a religion. It doesn't mean to have someone that is the plan in the universe. By spiritual means to be coherent, to be someone that really is in balance with what he or she does feel, and think. So this is why those machines shouldn't be turned on in these times, because we would use it to destroy and not to find the balance.
Is it possible that one day we could look at the symbols of the world without the meaning we have attached to them? Matthias suggests that if we could, our world would be much different.
It would be like a faster way to connect everything, to evolve as a society very fast, because our technology would be like thousands of years ahead in evolution, because we could understand how to create everything, how to download everything, like Tesla did, like he understood about all these codes, precisely because the third dimension is just one perception of this aspect of the Protita.
If these codes are left dormant until we can figure out how to spiritually connect with this device, could there be more clues of how to navigate this spiritual journey? Greg Braden points out that mysterious new symbols have been uncovered in South America.
We know of 23 ancient scripts that have yet to be understood, and we can only begin to imagine what it is, the secrets that they hold, and what they are telling us about our relationship to ourselves, to the earth,
come up with some shit,
and beyond the earth, if they were left to us by beings who are so sophisticated that they were able to communicate with ideograms streamlined, compactly, very efficiently, without the use of cumbersome alphabets and entire sentences and paragraphs to explain what it is that they were sharing.
Whatever these ancient scripts might be, they speak to something that we have not been able to crack yet, or perhaps understand.
A lot of people today are interested in extraterrestrial disclosure, but one of the great questions is, how will we communicate with extraterrestrial beings? Will they speak English? Probably not. So we're going to have to find some other method of communicating, and that's going to be through symbols. We're going to have perhaps a common symbol.
And this is was supposed to be when I ordered my stones. They sent this to me. This is supposed to be like a protection amulet. That's what they was talking about earlier. See the all the symbolism in it. That's the end of that. I'm finna play one. This one I'm finna put on gonna be about an hour because I'm finna jump in the shower while this playing. This is Beyond Belief. The Anunnaki, Giants, and the Serpent People with Freddie Silver.
Welcome to Beyond Belief. Freddie Silva with us, best-selling author, leading researcher of ancient civilizations, restricted history, sacred sites, and their interaction with massive consciousness. Freddie, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, I didn't know this was going to be.
What exactly is restricted sites?
Oh, yeah, I didn't know this was going to be an interview. I want something that's going to go all the way through. Let me find something else here. Trying to see where I can find here topics. I hate this thing be moving so slow. Okay. Expanded consciousness. We can have alternative realities, astral projection, chakras, divination, the dream world, metaphysical, mind potential, pineal gland, psychic abilities, universal consciousness. Let's see, I think we'll do this universal consciousness. Let's see what's up with this here.
My name is Matias Estefano, and my purpose is to remember. At a young age, I began to remember living in a colony of the ancient civilization of Atlantis. Then I began to remember living on other planets, in another star systems and dimensions. I started to understand how everything I remember has a purpose in my mission here and now, to help reconnect the network.
Yeah, I be wanting something that's gonna be interesting. Let me see, can I find something about my boy? Y'all know who my boy is. Did we listen to Incorporating America already? I know we didn't listen to The World of a Cook. So let's do The World of a Cook. Jordan Maxwell, World of a Cook.
We are finding that there are temples on the ocean floor, pyramids, Machu Picchu, Chichen Itza, incredible structures of temples and knowledge which is displayed about the universe, about astrology, the astronomical truths about the universe, the ancient, truly prehistoric and ancient people. They knew all about it. We're trying to catch up today to what they knew tens of thousands of years ago. We are finding everything that we think we know. It's already been here tens of thousands of years ago. There was a higher life forms on this earth than we are. I have a vision of from the ancient world were not what we would refer to as humans. I think that they looked like us, maybe, or in some ways like us. They were far superior. The people, whoever they were, that built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, had an extraordinarily brilliant understanding of the Earth, of our solar system, of the galaxy we're in, and all of the esoteric and profoundly important knowledge about life and the spirit of man and where we've come from and where we're going. And so it all implies that there was a far higher civilization all around the world. The best science we have today are admitting that we're just trying to catch up with what the ancient peoples already knew. These ancient, brilliant builders and teachers, they didn't grow into that. They came in fully developed. When you look at Egypt, Egypt is a classic example. If you go to the very beginnings of Egypt, it came in as an extraordinarily brilliant society of builders and knowledge, and then eventually devolved into what Egypt is today. But there was a time when Egypt was in its prime when it was founded. So it didn't kind of work up to, as we say, we're working up to some kind of a wonderful future. But Egypt didn't do that. It came in at its pinnacle. How is that possible? The only way it's possible is because when whoever this was that we call the ancient Egyptians, they were not of this world to start with. They came here knowing all that we still are trying to find out. So it implies that they were not from here. They came in fully understanding the whole universe. And they were able to do things with their temples and with the way that they laid out the pyramids. They knew things we didn't know, and we still don't know. And we're still trying today. In metaphysics and in occultism, religion, we're trying to find the bottom line that the ancient peoples, they already knew. There is obviously a high science behind the life, period. And all of the best in our human life, like astrology and alchemy and all of the other, what I call sciences. Others would say, no, they're just belief systems. No, they're sciences because when you really look into them, you begin to see that they're telling you things that scientists are just now beginning to realize. There's a higher occult or hidden. The word occult simply means hidden. And so there's obviously a higher science or occult science behind mankind's ability to contemplate the spiritual aspects of life on the earth. There's lots of ancient people already knew what we're trying to find out today. We know that the pyramids, say in Mexico, in Central and South America, along with the great temples around the world, were solar temples. They were the center for astronomy. And so the ancient peoples were not looking for spiritual answers as such. They were looking at the actual universe and trying to figure out where we are, what we're doing, and what is the universe. And so from that inquiry into the actual setup of the way the universe operates, then from there, they began to suspect that there was some kind of an unwritten, powerful laws in the universe that guided the sun, the moon, the planets, and the whole of the solar system. They start off scientifically just looking for answers to what we're doing here. What is this? And from there, they began to develop religions or philosophies, alchemy, astrology, medicine, and then human interrelationships. And then from there, you get into all the other metaphysical pursuits. And that's why today the world is half scientific and yet half spiritual. But the spirituality did not come first. There's the regular interest in how the world works. That's what the ancient people built those great observatories for. They just wanted to study the heavens. But in doing so, it didn't take long till around the world, mankind that was viewing the heavens for science began to suspect that there's something else going on here. And now comes the world of spirituality. As I said, the word occult simply means hidden. So there are many hidden sciences that the really bright people who are looking into these things know about. But generally speaking, the world of mankind is not really well informed about alchemy and about the sciences of spirituality. But that's growing now too. So people are beginning to wake up to the spiritual relevance to your life of spiritual subjects. I think that there is something there that needs to be looked at, this whole idea of where man has come from, where he is right now, and ultimately where is he going to go with his knowledge and with his life and experiences. What is the reason why we're having the experiences that each of us do have each day? We're all growing, and hopefully we are growing far more intelligent and insightful and looking at the spiritual aspects of our life. That's a very important feature of being alive, is to not just live for the material world today, but start asking serious questions about where were you before you were born? And where will you be after you leave here, this earth? And what is the reason for our human life? And why are we learning so many hard lessons the hard way? there seems to be some sort of an overshadowing presence in the universe that men have called God, or some sort of an ultimate spiritual presence that is leading or directing our evolution. And if that be the case, which it seems to be, then maybe there is some hope yet for the human race. If enough people begin to wake up, spiritually speaking, and begin to look at their lives spiritually, then there might be hope for us. Yeah, because this is why we are in the shape we're in today, because we are living in this me generation. And this generation that only cares about feeding itself and taking care of itself and enjoying itself, never realizing you have responsibilities to the world that you live in, and to help your fellow man, to grow and to help educate other people. I can speak for myself in relation to the idea of why do we seek wisdom and spiritual knowledge. I have always understood that I have questions within myself that others can't answer. And for me, looking at these questions, they make a lot of sense to me. Why this and why that? Why did this happen? So I have learned that to think deeply on these spiritual questions of life opened me up to a whole world of knowledge, because I realize how much I don't know. And I am also well aware of the spiritual implications of the laws in the universe around us. There are certain things you can do in this world and things you cannot do. And you will pay a terrible price for doing the things you're not supposed to do. And I am totally convinced that there is some sort of an overshadowing force in the world that wants us to grow. And this concept is even in Christianity, where you hear talk about good angels and bad demons and bad angels, implying that there are good forces, unseen forces out there, and then there are bad. And we know that there is something called good and bad. And there are certain things in all societies which are known to be bad and evil. I tend to think that there is something to this idea of reincarnation. And the reason why is because it is pretty much agreed upon by so many of the ancient religions and philosophers and great teachers of the world. My gut feeling is that we do come into this world with baggage from other lifetimes. And this is why we begin to become who we are, because of who we were before. Another part of that story is that before we came and incarnated on this earth, that we chose a particular lifestyle, we're told and given to understand, and that we chose our own parents before we came here. I understand the spirit world not enough to know. It's very possible that we were in a spiritual state, and then we incarnated into a physical state. Now, the rest of it is up for speculation. I'm totally convinced that there are very legitimate and real otherworldly, I choose to call it, otherworldly forces, spirit forces, demonic forces. There is no doubt in my mind about, because I've had too many personal experiences that tells me and proves to me that somebody's watching us. Somebody's watching the human family. The very history of how America was founded, and the founding fathers, so to speak, what vision they had when they were putting together the idea to found this country. What was their vision? What were they thinking? And what were they actually working toward? And now that gets into the subject of Freemasonry, to the secret sciences like alchemy and political. There's a lot of political stuff in there too. You have to be careful about secret societies. because these different societies become very powerful, very wealthy, but they have an agenda. They have a particular agenda that they're trying to create or to bring into being, and therefore they will build the whole world around you. And you accept what, when you're a child or a baby, you come into the world and you just accept everything. And if you don't grow up, you just, as a grown person, you just accept whatever there is because that's the way it is. But that's not the way it is. And you keep in mind that there were secret societies that were involved in founding this country. Who were they? And what were they trying to do? You have to know secret societies to understand why there are so many different symbols and emblems in Washington, D.C. and around the world. Because it's different groups, societies, that are working toward certain agenda, and they are putting symbols out that represent their agenda. We know that even in gangs. When you drive to neighborhoods like Los Angeles, and there are scribblings on the walls of gangs, those symbols mean something. And if you're in a gang, you know what those symbols mean. They're telling you something. Whoever is controlling that area, that's their symbols. And that's a whole study that you need to get into, studying the occult symbols of power in this world. They're used as a means to communicate and to influence you or to connect you with the spiritual world that they represent. So let's start with a religious symbol, and that is an ancient Phoenician god that was very important in the Middle East some 5,000 years ago. That god was called Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. Dagon was a fish god. Interesting how he has evolved into today's world of religion. Dagon is still very much alive with the world today. First of all, everyone knows that Christianity is founded on the worship of Jesus Christ. That is accepted around the world. And most people believe that the Vatican is the center for the worship of Jesus, the God of Christianity. However, millions of people also believe is that the Pope of Rome is leading the Christians to worship Jesus throughout the world. But my question is, who is the Pope leading the worship of? The first symbol that I want to talk about is the headdress that the Pope or the Bishop of Rome wears. That headdress is very interesting and has quite a history to it. That Pope's headdress is called Pope's mitre. The Pope's mitre, we've seen it in many different shapes, but they're always basically the same shape. The Pope's mitre. It's an official headdress worn only by the Pope, or supposedly only by the Pope. But we need to understand that that symbol goes back at least 5,000 years. So what we need to know and what we need to keep in mind is that this strange and interesting headdress of hat that the Pope wears is impacted by a god named Dagon. Dagon was a god of the Philistines, and Dagon comes from the word dag, which means fish. So Dagon was a fish god. And here we have pictures of another fish god named Anis, same god, but was worshipped in different countries under different names. So we have a god who's half fish and half man, or men who wear the garbs of a fish in their religious celebration. So here in the Jewish Encyclopedia, under the heading of Dagon, you will see a picture of the priest of Dagon, or the god himself, and he's wearing a fish head and the body of a fish down his back. So now we see the Pope's headdress. On the top is the Pope's mitre. But when turned, you then see he's actually wearing a fish head, the fish god Dagon, because he's representing the worship of an ancient Phoenician god. So this is why today Christians on the back of their cars, you will see, have a fish symbol. I'm thinking that that's to denote them as Christians worshiping Jesus. No, it's a fish symbol because it's denoting Dagon, the fish god. The significance is Dagon was a very important mystical god to the ancient peoples in the Middle East, in Babylonia, Sumeria, Phoenicia, Canaan. And that very powerful mystical god is still dominating the spirit and the intellectual thinking of religion even to today. So it's not Jesus that's influencing the Vatican and the Pope. It's Dagon, the fish god. That's the importance of this. The point being is that religion comes to the world in the age of Pisces. And Pisces is, of course, the two fish of the constellation of Pisces. But Dagon is 5,000 years old. Another one of the symbols I find to be very interesting that's used quite often around the world today, but a lot of people don't know how it's connected to the religions of today, and that is a magic wand. Magic wands, we've heard in stories galore from children from childhood days about magicians who use a magic wand. Well, the magic wand is just what it says it is. It's some sort of a branch of a tree that has been consecrated and made holy by blessings from the priest. And now it has a magic quality.
That's the
do things that other humans can't.
That's what I wanted y'all to hear. When he's talking about that wand, this made from a holly tree. That's where they get the name Hollywood.
The Druid priests, they use the wood of a holly tree. They use Hollywood. And that's what we get the term today, Hollywood, in the magic of Hollywood. Today we have Hollywood. We have Mickey Mouse waving a magic wand. On the left side, we also have actual real magic wands as they are made today in Europe. And of course, orchestra leaders, orchestra conductors, they lead the music with a magic wand. And a lot of people haven't thought about that, but that's what it is, a magic wand. So here we have a picture of Moses, where he is conjuring up the spirits in the universe with a magic wand. Very interesting, Moses with a magic wand. In the ancient Roman Empire, the most important god at the height of Rome's power in the world was a god named Mithra.
Still hanging, prophet?
Mithra was a sun god. And according to the Roman explanation of their god, he was not only a sun god, but he did his miracles with a magic wand. Now here we have Jesus raising Lazarus from the tomb. And you will see that Jesus is using a magic wand. How many Christians know that all throughout Europe and around the world, Christian churches have Jesus working his miracles with magic wands? A lot of people don't know that. So we hear all about the magical things that Jesus was able to do. But here in the actual churches, we see that Jesus is doing his miracles with a magic wand. The importance of this is to point out that people do not realize that in Christianity, the understanding in the ancient world and in the medieval world was that these religious figures like Jesus were doing their miracles with magic wands. But it's actually legitimate, de jure, real magical system of controlling people's minds and directing their spirits and their hearts and being able to direct our civilization through magical symbols, magical words. Another symbol that I find to be very interesting is in Star Trek, there was a Mr. Spock. And if you remember, Mr. Spock was always giving a hand sign, and he was said to be a Vulcan. First of all, His hand sign was actually a religious symbol in Judaism, in which it was a blessing to the congregation in Judaism. It's called the Kohen symbol. This symbol is a Jewish blessing symbol. But where did it come from? It comes from the split hoof of a goat. It goes back to the split hoof of a goat because we're talking about the age of Aries, the ram, when the Jews were under the age of the ram or the Lamb of God. And so that's why today we call Jesus the Lamb of God, going back to the constellation of Aries, the ram. Neboy even said that he accepted that sign and used it, but because it was a sign from his rabbi, and he thought it was a very interesting symbol, so he just used it in Star Trek. I'm sure he probably knew the meaning of the sign, but that's where he said he got it from. Another subject which is interesting and very relevant today is a symbol called the fasci, or the fasces. On the back of an American dime, you will see a bundle of sticks tied together, and it has an axe head with it. That is called a fasci, and this is an ancient Etruscan symbol that was adopted by the Roman Empire to symbolize Rome's power. It's an old ancient Etruscan symbol, but it's very important to the Roman Empire. Rome said, ancient Rome's philosophy was, if it's just one stick, and you can beat somebody with a stick, but it's not going to hurt them really. But if you got 2 or 3 sticks, now it's going to be a little bit heavier deal. But if you get 5 or 6 sticks and tie them together as one, now you've got serious strength. Now when you beat somebody with 6 or 8 sticks tied together, that's serious. And so then they put a hatchet head on it because an axe head always represented in almost all the ancient cultures of the world accepted that the axe head represented the presence of God. God was the great hatchet. He's giving you the axe. And so the hatchet head represented God, and the bundle of sticks represented a coalition of troops. So when Rome would go into to another country to overtake it, they would take troops from this group and troops from that group and put them all together. Now you've got a strong force. It's not just Romans. It's all kinds of other countries are with you. And so that's what we hear today when we hear the presidents talking about during the Middle East. They have a coalition of countries, not just America. We have other countries with us. It's a coalition. Coalition is another name for fasci.
You say you lost? What you lost about? I ain't got my glasses on. I'm just getting out of the shower. What you lost about? What'd you say you lost about? April showers. I meant to say, who was that this lost? Together we break chains. What you lost about? See what you talking about? I'm gonna try to explain. I don't know. You're not answering me. See, this is Jordan Maxwell. What he did was he went most of his life. What he did was he exposed the hidden symbolisms and everything that's in everyday life that we see, and how it all connects to spirituality. Where religion is like a man-made, we were already spiritual. We were born spiritual because we are spiritual beings. We're spiritual souls having a human experience. But what he does is he connects even down to the caution sign. It all has symbolism. It all has a deeper meaning behind what people think it is. It's more meaning to it. It's meaning behind words and different things.
Which is a symbol for world fascism, when you can get all the countries together and have them all, all doing the same thing, all of the countries marching to the same.
What he basically saying is, he's talking about all the symbolisms that are on the back of the dollar bill, that are on the back of all the money in every country, even the ones who they say that we are that are against us, their money and our money all has some of the same symbols on it, because we all still under the same umbrella. That's why the Holy Roman Catholic Church. That's who run this world. The Pope. That's who run everything.
So now you've got a strong military force. The fasci was usually carried officially behind Caesar.
Hold on a second.
He would be in the front of the parade or whatever, and there would be what is called lectors behind him, and they would be holding the fasci, symbolizing Caesar's power over life and death. He is the man. He's the boss. And so the lectors would be standing on both sides of Caesar on the altars when Caesar was speaking, holding those fasci, so that the Roman people know he has the right to life and death. So here you'll see in World War II, with Mussolini on the left, and his symbol for his government, a fasci. Well, of course, he's Italian.
Hold on a second.
Roman.
See?
And so here we have a Nazi, as you'll see, the swastika and the Nazi eagle, like the American bald eagle. But you'll see the two fascis on each side of the swastika. This is because Germany was in league with Italy during the Second World War. Mussolini had in mind to do the same thing Adolf Hitler wanted to do, was to create a new world order. And so Mussolini saw that new world order as being Catholic, as to be Roman, while Germany saw it to be German and not Italian. But the two together, I suppose they figured they'll work that out once they take over the world. Well, Mussolini actually, according to history books, actually thought of himself as Caesar. He saw himself in his position of power at the time of the Second World War as Caesar of the ancient Roman Empire, and therefore it would be right that he would pick the symbol that Caesar used to show his power. And so that's why the fasci became so fashionable in Italy. But the two fasci you will also see on the wall behind where the Speaker of the House sits when the President's making a speech. The United States has secret societies in their government, and behind the government are very powerful secret societies that see itself. These societies see themselves as the promoters and to generate a new world order. All countries copy each other. The fascists copied the Etruscans. The Romans copied the Greeks, and the Greeks copied the Egyptians, and that's just the way humans are. As much as we change, the more we stay the same. We're all still adopting the same symbols that we adopted under the Egyptian Empire. We're still using those symbols today, pyramids. Let's talk about the pyramid. And we all recognize that there's three beautiful pyramids on what is called the Giza Plateau in Egypt. But my question is, there's only one of the three of those pyramids is referred to as the Great Pyramid. First of all, you need to know that the pyramid that's directly behind the Sphinx is not the Great Pyramid. It is a Great Pyramid in Egypt, but it is not the Great Pyramid. This is the Great Pyramid of Egypt. How many sides does the Great Pyramid have? Well, you would think if there's 4 sides, and then there's the bottom is a side, so it would be 5-sided pyramid. But actually, in point of fact, no, the Great Pyramid is 9 sides. Why? Because on the first day of the spring equinox or the fall equinox, if you are in the right place at the right moment when the sun hits the pyramid, you will see. Why?
Yeah, I see it.
Because on the first day of the spring equinox or the fall equinox, if you are in the right place at the right moment when the sun hits the pyramid, you will see that each side is divided down the middle, but so subtle that when you're there at the pyramid, you don't notice it. But on the first day of spring and
What's
autumn,
up, Steve?
you will see
You all right
the Great
today?
Pyramid is divided down the middle. And so here again is another picture of the pyramid from above on that special day, that special hour when the sun's hitting it just right. And so each side is 2 sides. Therefore, if you got not 4 sides, but 8 plus the bottom side makes 9. So how many people know that the Great Pyramid of Egypt has 9 sides? It's strange, but it seems as that no one really knows why the Egyptians took so much effort to divide each side of the pyramid so perfectly and so brilliantly and such that you would not see it until a particular day at a particular time. We call it the Great Pyramid because there's a lot of important stuff implied in that pyramid. And the other pyramids do not even come close. They don't have anything like what's in that Great Pyramid. That is one act by itself. The only
Prophet and Steve been rocking with me from the beginning. They can tell you, I drop straight diamonds over here. But see, they won't push out my content. Now when I have like my Freaky Fridays, you know, when I broadcast, you know, that erotica and that tantric and all that, I have all kind of views then, see, 200-300 views. But when I broadcast this, I don't get that many views. And a lot of times people say they don't even get my notifications.
one. That's what we today call it the Great Pyramid. The next subject we'd like to look at for a moment is the cornerstone in the Christian religion. Christians will tell you that in the church of Christianity, Jesus is referred to as the cornerstone of the church.
And if you also, when they talk about that cornerstone, y'all also know every building is built in this country. The first cornerstone is going to be laid by who? The Masons.
But that's not exactly correct. The actual scripture says that he's not the cornerstone.
Prophet don't talk. Prophet just do hand signals. Prophet be up there giving us the holy smoke.
It says Jesus is the chief cornerstone. The cornerstone is what it's said to be, just a stone at the corner of a building. But wherever you set that cornerstone up, you're going to line all the other stones up with it. So it's the first one that decides where this building is going to be aiming. And so Jesus Christ, the cornerstone. But Jesus is actually referred to as the chief cornerstone. And that's important because there's totally different understanding of the word. The chief cornerstone. Chief cornerstone means a triangle placed on top of a pyramid. If you take a perfect, flawless pyramid triangle and you cut off the top, it itself is a pyramid, but it's a tiny one that sits on top of the big one.
Even the Scorpion King with the rock, all that shit got esoteric meaning in it. All of it. Everything you watch on TV have a hidden meaning.
That tiny little pyramid is called a pyramidion. A pyramidion is a tiny pyramid sitting on top of the big pyramid. That's what the Bible says Jesus is. He is a pyramidion. He's not a cornerstone. He's a chief cornerstone, which is on the top of a pyramid. That was the genius of the ancient Egyptians.
And if you notice, in the Scorpion King, I'm going back there again, when they had to go to I think that was not the Scorpion King. What was the name of that damn movie? Y'all know what I'm talking about too. The Mummy. The Mummy 2. Remember when they had kidnapped his son, and he kept leaving the breadcrumbs. Even the drawings he was leaving was esoteric. Where he was telling them every place they were going, and at the end when he was talking about when he was just talking about the pyramid was on top of Jesus was the pyramid on top of the pyramid. And remember when everything was getting sucked in, and it was a diamond on top. See what I'm talking about? Whole significance. Remember that. But the reason I'm thinking Scorpion King is because the Scorpion King did make an appearance toward the end of the movie. But even in the Scorpion King, it was esoteric. Because Scorpion King and the Mummy, they go hand in hand.
The more we stay the same. And so we use the same symbols that Caesar used. We use the same symbols that the Babylonians used. It's because mankind is hardwired, so to speak, to realize the importance of very powerful symbols to represent your civilization, who you are, where you come from, and what your destiny is. It's everywhere from religion to government to military, commerce, banking. Symbols is a way to communicate with the world.
Yep. I've known this from a child.
I'm George Maxwell, and thank you for watching.
I've known all of this from a child, y'all. I've always been different, stand out. I always saw the hidden meaning in things. So, my loves, I done been on now 3 hours and 7 minutes. So I'm going to call it a day for the day. I got started kind of late, But I appreciate all of y'all. I love you all for subscribing to me. Just go to my channel and check out my playlist. I'm quite sure y'all will find some very interesting content over here. And as always, go within so you never go without, because as above, so below.